All right, we are lucky enough to have Bush with us here from the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Obviously, y'all know him. He's been putting out a ridiculous amount of good content on flockfantasy.com, like making me feel like I have to step up my game here. Went through, updated the rookie databases. It looks like if you go to the database tab, you put out quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end databases for us there. I know you were saying you have a draft guide coming out. Now you're putting out an article for the top 20 rookies in 2024 Superflex draft. So had to have you on, need you to teach us a few things about these rookies where I know the top guys across each position, but I could probably name 6 players and then I'm out of my water.
Yeah. I mean, the 2024 class, I think we do this every year in dynasty leagues where we're like looking ahead to the next class as we get through this class and realize, oh, maybe these running backs and these wide receivers and, some of the quarterbacks aren't as good as we thought they were going to be. So now we're like, hey, man, just wait till we get Caleb Williams. Just wait till we get, Marvin Harrison. So we're all, licking our chops looking at these guys. So what I aim to do in the article that I posted was, highlight what they can do, highlight the strengths, why we're kind of interested in them, and then also to try and poke some holes in their prospect profiles so they're not these like, immortal like gods that we're looking forward to in 2024. Because we know the second, we get to the actual draft process, like we're wrapping up right now, a week or so away from the draft, we're going to start to poke holes in player X. He's too small, he's too slow, etc.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think back of what we were talking about with 2023 running backs last year, Tank Bigsby, Sean Tucker, these guys were the next great things. And now we're like, oh, okay, yeah, they can be interesting day 2, day 3 picks. But do you want to break this down more so as like a tier list? Could you break down the tiers within these rankings for us? Starting off, obviously, I think everybody, even an idiot like myself, will have Caleb Williams 101. I really don't think that we need to talk about this too much. Do you have any interesting takeaways other than this is a quarterback that is a phenomenal real life QB? He is a quarterback that has rushing upside, and he should probably score a zillion fantasy points at the next level.
Yeah, I mean, the goal of this exercise, like I said, was to poke holes in these prospect profiles. It's very difficult with Caleb Williams. I mean, won the Heisman Trophy this year. Obviously, like top 10 grades across the board as a passer, as a rusher. Like he's great, man. He can run the ball, he can throw the ball, he can do everything that we want to do. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's only 6'1", like 210, 215 pounds. So he's not like a 6'6", like Trevor Lawrence caliber prospect from a size perspective. But he does have the arm of like, the best quarterbacks in the NFL when you actually watch his film. I saw quite a bit of him when I was watching Jordan Addison's tape this year. The one thing I could poke a hole in Caleb Williams' game a little bit, in terms of like advanced metrics, accuracy wise, like catchable target rate, on target throw percentage and stuff, he did actually perform a little worse than I expected. He was like a top 25 quarterback in the country rather than like the single greatest quarterback in the country. So that was pretty much the only like real hole that I could poke in his profile. But aside from that, I mean, once this guy gets to the NFL, he will be like a top 8 overall startup pick in Superflex leagues.
Awesome. Well, would you throw Drake May in the same tier as him? Because this is another quarterback that should go the very top of the NFL draft. I think these guys are kind of locked into 1 and 2, right? And this is another quarterback that has a lot of rushing upside.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Drake May, if for those of you guys that don't know, if you think it's just Caleb Williams up there, no, I'm telling you, Drake May will be an awesome prospect too. 6'4", 6'5", give or take, 210, 220 pounds. Kind of looks a lot like Justin Herbert, a little bit shorter than him, but his passing grade last year was better than Caleb Williams. His rushing grade was better than Caleb Williams. He ran the ball for nearly 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. So he has like that dual threat ability that we look for. And in terms of like PFF's big time throw rate as well, he was up near 9%. So obviously the arm talent really showcasing itself. He has a shot to dethrone Caleb Williams as QB1. It's not a, it's not a wrap right now. It's not Caleb Williams as QB1 and no matter what. Like if he has a bit of a down season, Drake May continues doing what he's doing, he could absolutely be QB1 because he is a little bit more prototypical in terms of like a size profile. And I think he's probably a better runner a little bit as well.
So at this point, would we be going with those guys stand alone in the top tier, or are you going to be sneaking in Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously a phenomenal wide receiver prospect? I mean, a wide receiver is going to be a little more replaceable in Dynasty than what you're going to have with those elite level QBs. So from a tier-wise perspective, do you have Harrison coming in at 2, or is he tier 1 with the QBs?
He's tier 1 with the QBs because similar to Caleb Williams, you try and poke holes in this guy's prospect profile, and it's very difficult to do so because unlike his father, he is built very well. He's 6'3", 210, 205 pounds. So he's got the size. He's not going to be a concern for him at all. Obviously produced at a very, very high level this year alongside another receiver on his team that I have ranked very highly, Emeka Egbuka as well. He's really got no flaws outside of the fact that he ran a 4.60 coming out of high school. So maybe speed is going to be a flaw for him. But I think with training and, the combine stuff that these guys do before they actually run, he'll probably get his number down to like low 4.5s, high 4.4s. But he had a dominant year this year, and he'll probably have another great season as a junior.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been very interested to see if Jackson Smith and Jigbo was able to stay healthy, what the production would have been between those two guys, what the split would have actually been.
Yeah, it would have been really fun to see. Unfortunately, I think JSN still would have been playing in the slot with these two guys that we have in 2024 as great outside wide receivers. Because I think coming into the year, we expected JSN to work more on the outside because Garrett Wilson and Olave were primarily the outside guys in 2021. We're like, hey, we're going to get to see JSN work on the outside. But I think these guys probably still would have been the two outside wide receivers and leaving JSN to play the slot again. But if he had stayed healthy this year, this Ohio State offense, same with Travion Henderson, who we're going to talk about in a second, they could have probably won the national championship if they didn't have so many injuries.
Yeah, that would have been beautiful. But we have to drop down a tier at this point, right? Going over to 4, going over to our running back 1. So this is where you have that tier drop away from Harrison Jr. I honestly expected to say the quarterbacks were in their own tier. I didn't know he was that good of a wide receiver prospect. But what do we have with this guy here at 4?
Yeah, Raheem Sanders, Rocket Sanders from Arkansas. He's a really interesting running back prospect. There's a couple of guys in contention for RB1, but for me, when I look at the whole profile, like simplifying things, we look for running backs that can, carry a big workload. They got the size to do that. He's listed at 237 pounds, 6'2". So he's got the size. He ran a 4.52 coming out of high school at that size. So he's got the speed. Again, once these guys actually train for the combine, he could probably get that down a little bit as well. And he had an 8.7% target share, which was about 0.5% higher than Bijan Robinson's was this year. So a guy with like a 70th percentile target share. He's got the size. He's got the speed. He's able to catch the ball. The Arkansas offense obviously runs through him and KJ Jefferson running the ball. So I expect him to have another very productive year yet again. So for me, I think he's the safest bet for RB1 here, but he is obviously a tier behind the top two quarterbacks and Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, it was very interesting with the running backs. If we were looking a few years out, you really don't see the receiving breakout for a lot of these RBs to really take that next step until year 3, like almost over and over and over again, even with the elite running back prospects who can catch the ball. It's like all at once, as soon as they step on the college field, they can be productive rushers. But in terms of their receiving down skill set, it seems like that actually takes a few years for them to fully transition and for them to fully break out as that junior. So if you're seeing 31 targets already as a sophomore, we can be really confident that that's only going to improve your junior year.
Yeah, I mean, he needs to improve his efficiency as a receiver. He just had a 59.0 PFF receiving grade, and even his rushing grade was like in the 30s among running backs. So his efficiency probably needs to improve a little bit. That would be the big question for Raheem Sanders. But I think the framework is there for a guy that would be highly coveted in fantasy drafts.
All right, well, let's go back to Ohio State. Let's look at the other wide receiver I was looking at the 2022 stats for these Ohio State guys. Looks like these players are almost identical in terms of their receiving yards on a per game basis. So I don't necessarily know exactly how to break these players down. It's very similar to what you have with Ohio State a few years ago, where if you just have so much talent in the wide receiver room, if you're looking at market share numbers, you have to understand it with context. You have to be willing to dramatically change them.
Yeah, I mean, Emeka Egbuka posting a 25% target share on the same field as Marvin Harrison is extremely impressive. Now, he has CJ Stroud as his quarterback, obviously, which will change after this year because he's going to be moving on to the NFL. But having the numbers that he put up, like 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns, 19-year-old sophomore, ran a 4.42 coming out of high school, good size, 6'1", 203 pounds. There's another wide receiver prospect that I just don't see a ton of holes with. Like, obviously, he's not, the number one on his team because Marvin Harrison's this transcendent prospect, but I think he's going to be a mid-first round NFL draft pick come the actual NFL draft, and he's going to be highly sought after in fantasy too.
A big thing when we're trying to project out where these guys are going to go in the NFL draft, are we able to use NFL mock draft database? Do you feel comfortable saying, okay, well, their 2024 big board should be similar to what we should expect in the 2024 draft? Obviously, a lot will change, but is that a good starting point? Because right now, they have both of these Ohio State wide receivers as top 10 NFL picks.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me. I think those NFL draft services, the information's doesn't catch up quite as far as advanced as some of the dynasty space guys would. Like the Devi bros, they're all over these guys way in advance. And I actually think that's probably the best gauge of when we're going to see these guys get drafted in the NFL draft. And also just kind of, looking at their profile on paper, you can kind of get an idea for where NFL teams are going to draft them. When you see a guy with good size, with good speed coming out of high school, with a good production profile at a big school, you can probably assume he's going to be a first round receiver.
All right, well, let's go over to our next guy, Ohio State. So we have 3 Ohio State Buckeyes in the top 6 here. Just ridiculous. But what are we looking at with this running back?
I mean, Travion Henderson in his freshman year, he was phenomenal. He had a monster season. People were touting him already as the 101 in 2024 rookie drafts. And he had a 6% target share as a true freshman too, which is also quite a good number. But he kind of has followed the J.K. Dobbins career trajectory where great freshman year, down sophomore year with some injuries. Hopefully he does what J.K. Dobbins did as a junior, which blow up for like 2,000 yards. So size-wise, 5'10", 214. You love to see that 4.45 speed coming out of high school, and a great production year in as a freshman in 2021. This year, he's going to have to stay healthy, obviously, and he's going to have to produce. But he absolutely could be the RB1 in this class, go as high as 104 in rookie draft.
Yeah, so I remember after last offseason, people just going nuts for him with this sky high expectations this year. But let's go over to another school that generally has a lot of talent. Let's go over to LSU, where we have a wide receiver. Are we dropping down a tier here after 6? How are you breaking down the tiers with these guys 4, 5, 6, 7?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a tier break here, and people might disagree because we haven't gotten to the tight end from Georgia yet. But I know how dynasty players think, and I know he looks like he's a great prospect, and he definitely is. But we generally don't love tight ends, so we'll probably start to fade Brock Bowers the closer we get to actual rookie drafts, just because people are like, I don't want to draft a tight end, 6th overall in my rookie draft or whatever the case is. So Malik Neighbors is the guy, we're talking about now, wide receiver from LSU. He's a bit of a projection because he pretty much just had 1 year production so far as a sophomore, 21% target share, just over 1,000 yards, only 3 touchdowns. But this is the same offense that, people were clamoring that Kayshon Boutte couldn't produce in because it's like a terrible system. And this sophomore outproduced him thoroughly. And he also, again, has good size, 6'1", 190 pounds, ran a 4.47 at a high school. So I see a big school wide receiver who produced already with a major target earner leaving his offense. And if Malik Neighbors can take a step forward, 27, 28% target share this time next year, then he could be a guy that that people are valuing as a top 8 wide receiver in Dynasty rookie drafts.
I always just like to see the players that have another NFL talent on the same roster, even if it is someone like Kayshon Boutte, who obviously disappoints in the process, plummets down the draft in 2023, or at least we're assuming that he's going to. But I mean, I like seeing the fact that you're able to be on the field with another guy that has NFL consideration and you're able to dominate the targets. Like that's my favorite thing. That's why, I mean, it really went all in on those Ohio State guys last year with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. But yeah, I mean, our next player is someone that I am going to be, of course, a little bit biased with. Hook 'em horns. We got to talk about our guy, Xavier Worthy. Disappointing year 2. I will admit we had some drops, definitely. But at the end of the day, the freshman season was phenomenal. It's something that's hard to not think about. And like I said, I'm really biased on this one. I think you're a Texas fan as well. So maybe we aren't the people to listen to on this front.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have a couple Longhorns here in a second that we're talking about. Xavier Worthy had an awesome freshman year, 30% target share, almost 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. That's pretty crazy that somebody could come in right away and do that. And he still had a 29% target share this year. But like you said, 7 drops, and some of them, like especially the one against Alabama, they're like crucial drops that you don't want to see. Dealt with up and down QB play, injured quarterback play with Ewers out for a couple games this past year. We're going to have the exact same conversation about this dude that we're having with Jordan Addison. Some of these smaller wide receivers come next year, listed at 164 pounds. So size definitely a concern. Also listed at like 6 foot, 6'1". So he's like a lanky type of receiver, but he runs in the 4.2s coming out of high school. He ran a 4.29. So he's got speed. He's got production. He just kind of needs to put it all together as a junior this year. And hopefully Texas's quarterback situation's a little bit solidified now.
Yeah, I mean, we will see the spring game. I mean, I don't know if you saw the cut ups. I wanted to go to the spring game, but sadly couldn't make it. I don't want to get too optimistic with anybody from Texas because when I do, it is always a letdown. So I'm going to try to not hype myself up too much with Worthy. But going over to Brock Bowers, you were already talking about the fact that people are going to be a little upset that he is this low in general. I mean, I am always on the side of we're fading rookie tight ends. Like even with Kyle Pitts, I was ranking Travis Etienne over Kyle Pitts. I was maybe ranking Trey Lance over Kyle Pitts. I will admit that just because we can admit phenomenal elite level tight end prospect. But even if you have a great rookie tight end season, a great year two, even if you're Pat Frymuth, your value doesn't skyrocket. It can increase slightly, but historically speaking, if you're looking at what happens with those tight ends that find success early on in their NFL careers, the dynasty community doesn't react like you would think they would. It's not like they see a young, productive tight end. They're like, okay, we're ready to go all in right away, unless his name was Kyle Pitts. So Brock Bowers, I mean, very interesting. I just pulled this up. 25% of his team's receiving yards on a per game basis as a true freshman at tight end at Georgia. It is phenomenal. So am I missing anything here with them?
No, he's a great prospect. In tight end premium leagues, he probably should be a higher selection than this. But it's difficult with tight ends, man, because number one, he's actually a little undersized too. And again, we're looking out into this draft class normally with like rose-colored glasses. Nothing is wrong with these prospects, but once we get them under the microscope in the draft process, people are going to start to talk about his size. People are going to start to talk, about the fact that rookie tight ends don't really produce that much, especially if this class coming up, Michael Mayer and Kincaid and stuff, they don't produce again. We're going to be like, why are we going to, draft another tight end early on when none of these guys ever produce? People will take it out on Brock Bowers if this class doesn't produce right away. He's kind of like an Evan Ingram plus type of profile, 6'4", 230 pounds, top 3 in PFF receiving grade each of his 2 years so far, freshman and sophomore year in the SEC at Georgia, commanding a number of targets over there, 18% high career target share though. So not a guy that's like overly dominant of the targets. Like for example, Michael Mayer this past year was 33% of the Notre Dame's targets. So a guy that I have a little bit of question marks about more so than other people. I want to see him command a little bit higher of a target share, and I also want to see a blow up type of season because I know he's a good athlete. He ran a 4.48 coming out of high school at 230 pounds, so probably blow up the combine. I just have a little bit more concern, I think, than some other people.
Yeah, well, we have another tight end coming up soon, but we got to get through the running back in Wisconsin first. So where are you drawing the tiers at this point? Are we seeing another tier drop after Brock Bowers at 9? Did we see that tier drop a little bit earlier, or is it from 9 to 10?
Yeah, I would say after Bowers is probably a teardrop because as much as Braylon Allen from Wisconsin has gotten a lot of hype because, us in the dynasty community, we love it when prospects are really young coming out. He's literally 19 years old right now heading into his junior year because he was 17 as a freshman and he'll only be 20 years old on draft night. And as a running back with a short shelf life, man, we got to love a young running back coming into the NFL. But I'm not really sure that this guy's any good. I mean, he's 6'2". He's like 230 to 240 pounds. So he's got the size. He ran a 4.8 coming out of high school. And when you watch him on film, you know that he is not a blazer. He's not Jonathan Taylor just because he's a Wisconsin running back. He does not have the speed that Jonathan Taylor had. I mean, 2 seasons of 1,250 rushing yards, but he's been ranked outside the top 100 running backs in PFF rushing grade the last 2 years and only 30 targets in 2 seasons as well. So we have a guy with speed concerns, with receiving ability concerns, but he's a young running back that's got size. So everybody's really excited about him. I'm poking the holes before these questions come up next year.
I mean, if you run slower than a 4.6, like I'm kind of out on you. With running backs, I don't need you to be super athletic, but you have to be athletic enough. You have to be fast enough. Obviously, if you're bigger, we can give you definitely an excuse on that front. Like if you're looking at your speed score, but if you're coming out running a 4.65, I'm just pulling the Isaiah Spiller. I'm pulling the Kyron Williams and saying you're not interesting in the slightest, even if you are a bigger bodied running back. I mean, obviously everybody has their price, but let's go over to another tight end here, looking at someone that is from Texas. So I'm going to keep my lips shut. You can take it from here.
I mean, again, I'm a Texas fan too, so I'm totally biased here, but I think Jatavion Sanders is in for a monster breakout season this year. I don't think it's a closed book, just like a quarterback that Brock Bowers is tight end 1. I think that Jatavion Sanders could take over that throne. He's got the size, 6'4", 256 pounds listed, ran a 4.56 coming out of high school, 18th highest receiving grade in the country at 76.1, really in his first season playing significant snaps. We saw a connection develop early with Ewers, and then he got injured, and then it kind of stunted his development a little bit, but he still posted a 19% target share, 600 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think Texas is probably going to rely on him a lot more this year, and Jatavion Sanders, I would not be shocked if he comes out and has like a monster season and rises to like the tight end 1, at least in the eyes of the NFL, because Bowers is a little bit smaller, maybe not as much of like an inline threat for NFL teams. And I wouldn't be shocked if Sanders got drafted higher than him.
I mean, yeah, that's always like the dichotomy between fantasy football and real life value, where you're going to have the guy that can actually block, providing more real life value. If you're looking at, say, the 2017 draft class, OJ Howard versus David Njoku, Evan Ingram. David Njoku, Evan Ingram were probably the better picks because they were going to be the receiving guys. Whereas from a real life perspective, maybe you wanted OJ Howard, obviously didn't work out, but he's the guy that can actually stay in line and block. So it is interesting, of course, to project out the capital, but going over to a quarterback that looks like he can run the ball in Arkansas. But what I always have an issue with in terms of projecting these quarterbacks a few years out is feels like we really never know if the draft capital is guaranteed outside of the very few instances where you have like a Caleb Williams or you have a Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback class behind Caleb and Drake is going to be probably one of the bigger storylines to follow if you have a bunch of 2024 capital, because it could go any direction. We could have no other first round quarterbacks, or we could have 3 or 4 more first round quarterbacks, because a guy, KJ Jefferson's currently my quarterback 3, because if he hits, he's kind of like the Konami code profile. He has 800 rushing yards last year playing with Raheem Sanders, who we had up at 4. 9 touchdowns on the ground. His passing grade and his PFF grade overall was like pretty solid. PFF seems to really like him, and he's got great size, 6'3", 245 pounds, kind of like Anthony Richardson-esque size there. He's not as good of an athlete as Anthony Richardson, but he does have like the profile we're looking for a fantasy quarterback. He's a little bit older, redshirt senior now coming into this year, never passed for more than like 24 touchdowns on a season. Doubt that'll change this year because they run the ball so much there at Arkansas. So he definitely needs some development, but I do think NFL teams might view him as like a bigger Jalen Hurts project type of quarterback if he has a good year this year.
Well, our next running back, someone that we've heard the name of over and over and over again for years now. I mean, the man, you say he's going to be 23 years old on draft night. Obviously, we don't love that from an RB, but someone that's been in the Devy community for quite some time.
Yeah, Blake Corum from Michigan, he really, I mean, he screwed himself and Donovan Edwards, who we're going to talk about in a second, coming back to school, because not only would Corum have probably been like a second or a third round pick this year, we also then would have had an open backfield for Donovan Edwards in 2024 to potentially be a high draft pick. But I mean, I'm guessing he's coming back to try and win a national championship at Michigan there. That seems to make the most sense to me. But he has a little bit of concerns because he's 5'8", 210. That's what he's listed at. I wouldn't be shocked if he was closer to 200 pounds. 5'8", like he said, 23 years old. He'll be on draft night, ran in the 4.6s coming out of high school. He's a great college running back. In fact, he literally has posted the highest PFF rushing grade in the PFF college era since 2014 at 96.2, slightly higher than Bijan Robinson's 96 this past year. So the guy was unbelievable this year. I would have come out if I was him. I don't know why he went back to school.
Yeah, do you think it's NIL money?
It has to be. I mean, like, they have a chance to win the national championship. It's a huge program. That's got to be the only reason.
Well, staying in the same backfield, maybe someone, do we have more size with Donovan Edwards? Because running backs, that's always a position where I'm like, I have to see the size. I kind of want to see size, athleticism, ability to catch the ball, and everything else work itself out.
Yeah, I mean, the pass catching ability is definitely better with Donovan Edwards. He had a 6.9% target share as a freshman, 7.3% target share last year. So he definitely has a little bit more of a receiving profile, but he also kind of has a bit of size concerns himself. 6 foot, 204 pounds isn't really the greatest size. And again, we're talking listed weights on the website, which generally are inflated. He's a little faster, I think 4.55 coming out of high school. So he might be more interesting, I would say, than Corum, especially considering he'll be the younger back, not the guy that's 23 years old who came back for his senior season or whatever. So again, I'm just annoyed that Corum went back to school and didn't. We would have had a full season. Donovan Edwards is the starting running back for this team if it wasn't for Corum coming back.
Yeah. Well, going over to Clemson, are we seeing a teardrop, or is Will Shipley in a similar range to the Michigan running backs?
I think the teardrop for me kind of came after Jatavion Sanders, KJ Jefferson, and the 2 Michigan running backs, and then probably Shipley and probably the next 2 guys we're going to talk about here would probably be all in the same kind of like tier as like middle of the first, late first round question marks, early second round type of rookie picks if they can hit. Will Shipley from Clemson is kind of interesting. Again, nearly a 10% target share as a sophomore is definitely intriguing. 5'11", 205, again, listed weight. Maybe he's a little undersized. 4.42 coming out of high school. But his efficiency marks, again, kind of like Braylon Allen, he may not actually be that good of a running back. His efficiency marks, only 5.5 yards per carry in the ACC. If you guys remember when ETN was coming out of Clemson, people were like, we average like 6.8 yards a carry, but it's the ACC. I mean, this guy literally averaged 5.5 yards per carry in the ACC, playing for the best team in the ACC as well. So I think he just needs to be more efficient, more dynamic in his final season at Clemson.
Our next guy, I mean, this is what I've been waiting for. Okay. Tell me everything's going to be okay. We had the next greatest thing coming out of high school, going to Texas. In my mind, he was bad this past season. Okay. I don't want to cut it any other way. I know he flashed. First half of the Alabama game looked really good. But Ewers was bad. He was supposed to be the next Trevor Lawrence. Do we have a shot? What's going on here?
He's absolutely not going to be the next Trevor Lawrence. So you can close the book on that. I mean, he's 6'2", like 200 pounds. So he's not even close to the size profile as Trevor Lawrence. I mean, because he has a mullet, people kind of see him like a Herbert type also. I don't know. For me, all I saw from him this year was like the big time throws, like 5.7% big time throw rate. We saw that, but he also only completed like 57% of his passes, had a 14-6 touchdown interception ratio, and ranked as like the 70th greatest quarterback in college football, according to PFF. So, and he dealt with injury too early on in the season. So he's highly valued by a lot of people in like the 2024 class. People assume that, hey, it's Caleb, it's Drake, and then Quinn Ewers is QB3. To me, he's expected to win the job. I don't even think that's a guarantee. I wouldn't be shocked if he lost the job and had to transfer this year and then comes out in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, Manning didn't look good in the spring game, but with Ewers, the thing is, going back to it, I believe the only players that were ranked as high as him as prospects coming out of high school, wasn't it Trevor Lawrence and then Vince Young? Am I mistaken with that?
Oh, he's one of the highest high school recruits to come out in a while. Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's go over to another quarterback, this time in Michigan with JJ McCarthy. What are we thinking here?
Yeah, he's kind of interesting. He's got tools, 6'3", like 200 pounds, give or take. He ran a little bit last year too, 400 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. And the problem I have with him is he's kind of just like a game manager for Michigan there. It makes sense. I mean, they have the 2 great running backs. You're trying to win games. They have a good defense. There's no reason to put your young quarterback at the helm of your team and like make him make decisions. Because we saw it in the college football playoff that there was, pick sixes and fumbles and stuff like that. So the turnovers need to be fixed going into next year. Again, this is exactly the story of this quarterback class. Like, it could go well for some of these guys, or it could go terribly. And we're talking about like the next, Tanner McKee in this year's class kind of thing.
Let's throw the last 3 guys on shortly. Where do you put these guys in comparison with the tiers that we were having with Quinn Ewers, JJ McCarthy, the Michigan running backs, the Clemson back? Where do you drop the tier? And do you have Benson, Franklin, and McCord all in a similar range?
I would say Benson would be the closest one to that next tier. Franklin and McCord, I'm like, they're just like dart throw kind of guys. But Benson, I like. He's very interesting to me because he led the country in elusive rating according to PFF, and he's a big back. He's 6'1", 215. So, I mean, you got a big back with some wiggle who can catch the ball a little bit and who could see a bigger role this year because he only carried the ball like 150 times last year. I'd be interested to see what he does at Florida State this year. Troy Franklin's pretty much just like fast, and Bo Nix is like getting some buzz. So I'm sure NFL scouts will keep an eye on Troy Franklin at Oregon because he ran like in the 4.4s coming out of high school. And then Kyle McCord, I kind of just threw up as a wild card because CJ Stroud is leaving. And obviously any quarterback stepping into an offense with Igbuka and Marvin Harrison on the outside is probably going to have an easy chance, but it's not even a guarantee that he starts.
Well, thank you for coming on, my man. Really appreciate it. Thank you for doing everything you do. Of course, you can always find Corey. You always find Bush on the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Everything's linked below. You got anything else for me, my man?
No, I wanted to just get a real sense of how good the 2024 class is. So I'd say like the major takeaways from this video is the early 2024 firsts are going to be valuable. They are absolutely worth the squeeze. Like, trade, your 108 in this year's rookie draft if you don't like the board for an early potential first next year. The mid to late first, a little bit sketchier. I would say the mid first looks a little bit better with Igbuka and some of the running backs, but late first round 2024 picks, I would say might be a little overvalued in some leagues that are just like really, really projecting the best for that class. And of course, people are going to come out of nowhere every single year. But for me, I have a little bit of question marks outside of the top like 5 to 7 names.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, my man. Thank you for everybody watching this. Really hope you have a great day, Corey, and really hope everyone else does as well.